Call the roll.
Gillespie,
Here.
Schubert,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Cefuentes,
Here.
Lache,
Here.
Olivas.
Here.
Okay, on to public comments. You would have had to have signed up before 6 p.m. to speak. We ask that you respect the 3-minute time limit and ask that you respect the confidentiality of our students and staff. Mary Foltz.
Hello. Thank you. So what brought me here tonight is that some of you know, some of you don't know that I'm actually running for the school board right now. And something was brought to my attention, and I think should be brought to the school board's attention because you're not aware of it because it's a private page. However, there is a East Aurora staff member that is publicly attacking adults, families that are in the district, including myself and my grandchildren. And they actually said on their post that they admit that they are a East Aurora staff member. In their post, that's on the East Aurora page that's for mothers who have children in the district. And I've been a member of that page for many, several years. I'm gonna try to pull it up here really fast for my minutes expire. I'm probably not gonna get on your internet. No, I'm not gonna get on your internet. But what it is though, that what they said on here is, and what I would like to do is I'm gonna print it out. I'll get it to the superintendent. I would like for each one of you to have a copy of it. And what it was that, I'm gonna try to go verbatim, what it said was that, that there's members of the staff, including myself, if I'm just trying to say it, that have issues with you running for the board. And I replied very nicely and left my phone number if they wanted to talk because they said they were a staff member. And so then they came back and said that, well, you should be concerned about your grandchildren and their issues. Publicly, they said this. And then some other things. And then there's other posts inside of the same post. And what they're doing is they're posting anonymous. What they don't know is that when you post anonymous, that a person we can get a tech person to go and find out their ISP, whatever address, connect them to their Facebook page and find out who this employee is. And who knows, maybe they're not employed, but for them to say that they're a staff member of East Aurora and you're attacking parents that have children that are in the East Aurora school district, that is pretty sad, and I'm very appalled by it. And some of the things that are posted in this page are very private, very personal, and only a staff member. And I'm gonna be honest, what some parents said that, well, it could be a school board member. I said, no, I don't think, why would they go into all this? But it's very detailed about people's children, things that are happening, the things about my grandchildren. I couldn't believe that they said that and made it an issue publicly, and my grandkids are going to succeed. I'm not held accountable for my grandkids. No one else is, I am a very big leader in this community. I'm big on education. I'm big on advocating for the children, families. And this right here is just should not be happening. And I think that the school board should know, the superintendent should know what's actually happening in our community in its public size, in a private page though. And I'm willing to share that information with you. Thank you so much. It won't come up, so thank you.
Okay. And I believe, Linda White, you had crossed through the, okay, all right. Okay, so that concludes the public comments. So we will go on to the discussion items for superintendent search. So.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Deborah Hill, Managing Director of BWP and Associates and one of the co-leads for the superintendent search for East Aurora School District 131. My colleague, Dr. Ann Nolan, is joining us via phone, but she can hear all of the conversation and will be able to contribute to the discussion. And so I'm going to just tell a tale out of school. Here we are freezing to death. Ann's in Florida. So I want you to feel sorry for her. Um, although she says it's not really warm there yet. However, we did submit to you, and one of our other associates will be joining us. Interestingly enough, he's finishing up a meeting with his finance committee in his home district, and so then he'll be joining us, and I'll give him an opportunity to introduce himself. I'm pleased to be able to come in without having run through the door like I did the last time. I came and met you and spoke with you. So I was here early, actually got a chance to find the place and settle in. So again, I'm pleased to be able to provide this information. Feel free to interrupt me at any point in time relative to the discussion that we're going to have. You have received electronically, I believe, the Community Audit and Leadership Profile Report. You now have hard copies of it, and that's the latest iteration of the actual report. Any additional changes based on your reading them and feeling that something was missing or should be added or should be, included, let us know, and then we'll make those changes and submit a final copy. So consider this kind of a working draft. We prepared a PowerPoint presentation that summarizes this report. Again, the notion of a community audit and its contribution to the leadership profile report really is something that we talked about initially when we were selected to work with you. The notion that finding out what some of the strengths and some of the challenges, but particularly what skill sets and characteristics you're looking for a new superintendent would be very important in terms of soliciting, headhunting, tapping people on the shoulder, and ultimately you're selecting your next superintendent. So I think I'm going to go to the next slide, which I should do. Hit enter. Okay. So again, the consultants that we're working with, Dr. Ann Nolan, again, is on the phone, Dr. Sheila Harrison-Williams, Dr. Hector Garcia. All of us have been superintendents. Dr. Garcia is currently a superintendent. And so we're coming in from years of experience in terms of working with the superintendent's role, as well as I think Ann has done probably over 100 searches. I've done a few, probably about 70, because as managing director, I direct the other 9 directors in terms of their superintendent searches. But it is a national search. So it's not just local, it's a national search. So when we talked with the board initially about the purposes of this community engagement process, and I'm not going to be reading all of the slides, I'm just going to be highlighting them, but there is a purpose. One of the things coming in as a superintendent, you want to walk in and have some sense of community support. Support for the board, because they are the people who selected you and who you're working with. But a lot of that is coming in with some information with regards to the community. As we mentioned when we first met with you, the role of the Board of Education is to select the superintendent. It is not the role of the community to select the superintendent. If they want to be a part of that selection process, they need to run for the board. However, the community's role is to provide feedback and input to the board with regards to their selection. And so to do that, we engage in this process where we're looking for the strengths, we're looking for the challenges, and again, we're looking specifically for skill sets and characteristics that will enable us to present a leadership profile that becomes our blueprint. So that means all of us, the board and the consultants, are walking from the same page. We're looking at the same issues and the same things. And while there may be some things on either end of the project, we really focus on looking at that leadership profile. So identifying the desired qualities and characteristics enables us to hone in on specifics, and you'll see what that looks like. It also enables us to build community understanding and support. Having been a superintendent, there's nothing worse than walking into a district and having to deal with people who feel like they didn't vote for you, so therefore they're not going to support what you do, and you've got to spend your time trying to calm those waters rather than spending your time boots on the ground in schools, working with staff, working with principals, working with the board, working with children, which should be the goal. So that's part of the objective in terms of this kind of process. And then finally, ensuring the broadest possible community participation. One of the things that we say, we ask the board and the staff to notify everybody in the community about what their role is. And we'll talk a little bit about what those components look like. But we like to say, from the standpoint of the community, if you didn't know about it, that's one thing. But if you knew about it and chose not to participate, that's something altogether different. And so again, your staff has done a yeoman's job of getting the message out to the community in terms of their participation. And I'll talk about what that looks like momentarily. So here are the things we did. We conducted some meetings. We talked with board members, either by telephone or email, all the board members. Everybody was asked the same questions, which I'll go over in a few minutes. We had some conversations. There were about 84 people who we spoke with over a 2-day period. 101 of those, in terms of some of these conversations, responded to an online survey in Spanish. And so again, from the standpoint of outreach to your community, I think there was an excellent job done with regards to that. Engagement activities, we started in December. And so it's always difficult to gather people when they're the holidays. You've got to work around vacations and holiday planning, et cetera. But we started December 8th and concluded January 12th. And we talked with teachers and employees and students and parents and community leaders and community members to get this data, bless you, and get this feedback. So not including duplications. And I need to just say that typically the duplications are minimal. Some people who come to a focus group and then also do the survey, but that's usually not a large number, and it was not in the case here as well. There were approximately 890 participants community-wide. Now, for a district this size, it's not quite where we would like for it to be. It's representative, but you're a large district. And so again, we took the information that we received. Your percentage of participants in the survey was on the low decent end. We were hoping for 1,000. We tried to push 1,000. We ended up with 800. And again, 101 of those were those who responded to the survey in Spanish. And I have to tell you that in districts, your size or larger or even smaller, we rarely get that many responses in Spanish. And so that's a real plus relative to that information that we received. Questions so far?
No.
Anne, you want to add anything? Okay. There were 4 key questions that we asked all participants and that were really the basis of the survey. What do you see as the strengths of East Aurora School District? What do you see as the greatest challenges facing East Aurora School District? And again, those 2 things are really important because applicants look at that. They look at those components to say, how does that match who I am, or what experiences I have, or what expertise I can bring to the fore by looking at just those 2 components. We usually get asked by candidates, if they get to the point where they're interviewed, tell us about the board. And so again, having an opportunity to have that kind of concrete information coming from the community, plus the board's responses and reactions, again, give your incoming superintendent a good opportunity to know what they're walking into. The next are what qualities and characteristics will the next superintendent need to possess and to demonstrate. What's really interesting about this is the same shoe does not fit every foot. There are people who are great superintendents out there, but they may not be what you need. And that's why it's important to identify those skill sets and characteristics. You may have someone that's a super duper person relative to finances and gathering grants. Well, you guys are pretty okay in that arena. So yes, you want somebody with some experience there, but that doesn't have to necessarily be the top of the heap in terms of skill sets and characteristics. So again, that allows us to market your school district and to then provide an opportunity to find the best fit. And then finally, what are other factors the board should consider when reviewing candidates? And there's usually always a 50-50 split, but you want people to have an opportunity to respond to whether that person should have a doctorate. Again, it's a balance. Some people say a doctorate is important because you have staff who have doctorates, and so you want someone who they feel like, is on their level. Others say it's experience, experience, experience. There are plenty of people out there who have great experiences who are all but the dissertation. And so they've done all the classwork and done all the homework and just didn't get to the dissertation. So we ask that as one of those other questions. Another question, do they have to be a seated superintendent? There are many, many administrators out there who do superintendent work and don't have the title. And so again, that gives us an opportunity to determine whether our applicants, and you're really actually looking for someone that has superintendent experience or just has a superintendent title. And then finally, should the individual have to live in the district? Some school districts actually have it as a part of the board policy that the person needs to live in the district. Again, that's something that we need to share with the applicants so that they'll know what their options are relative to that piece. We recognize that it's very important for them to be connected to the community, but that can be done in various ways. But again, you get your constituents a chance to have a little bit of input relative to that piece. So those are some of the other kinds of things that we ask people to respond to, whether they were being interviewed, such as you, the board, or whether they were in the focus groups, or whether they did the survey, so that we could gather this data and have both quantitative and qualitative data to come up with some focal points, some things where there seemed to be some agreement. Everybody didn't agree on everything, and everybody had an opportunity to share what they wanted to share. But we did advise that their information was anonymous. We would group it according to groups, but no individuals' names were mentioned, even at the board level. And we just collected that data and actually wrote what people had to say. And then did a statistical analysis, which is called a frequency distribution process, to look at the survey results and what our notes had to say from the communication that we had in person. And so we talked about the fact that we had meetings. They were informal. We did them in groups. We did some introduction. We gave them an opportunity to understand the process. I continue to hammer home, you don't get to vote, because that sometimes is a major issue in school districts where community members think that they ought to have a say-so. And that's going to come up again when you have your discussion about how you're going to proceed once you get candidates that you've identified, what kind of community engagement you will be utilizing in order when you get down to that level. Comments that were frequently mentioned or particularly relevant and insightful were collected, and that's where that frequency distribution comes in. So when you had a number of people that said communication, 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 some were specific about what they meant, others were just saying communication could be improved. By the same token, diversity was something that came up frequently, the diverse population of your community and what a joy that is and what a plus that is. And so that's kind of how that unfolded. And then we listed the prominent responses in the report. And one of the things that we found over the years is that when community members feel like they've been heard and they can actually see some of their language in a report, then you don't continue to get that pushback and that feedback that says, you didn't listen to me. You didn't listen to us. Here it is. We've said it. We've now plucked out those pieces that that meet kind of a median, and now we're going to move on. So you can't say you weren't heard. And so that's one of the other components in terms of the success of community engagement activities. As I said, we wish we had had more participants in the forum, but you got what you got. And we reported it, and now, again, we can move on from there. People can say if stepped up, then they were heard. And And again, that the notion of what happened with your survey, as I said, we were hoping for 1,000, but 800 out of that is not a bad, it's not a too going. So we were pretty. So when we looked at the survey results, remember you've got the survey results and you have the qualitative results. Here are some of the strengths that came out of the survey, and we combined both the Latino responses, the Spanish responses, and the English responses to say culture and a supportive community, excellent teachers, and the resources and technology. Those were considered strengths. And what you will see in the report itself is there are really 10. We took the top 10 of those strengths that were listed in all of those formats. But here were the ones that were highlighted in the survey, where you can actually see the data. The top 3 challenges: culture and supportive community, excellent teachers, available resources and technology. Sometimes you get some of the things that are positive, and some of those same things people feel like they're good, but they need to be worked on some more. Top 3 skills needed in the next superintendent: communication, leadership and organizational skills, interpersonal skills. And again, when you have applicants and you're looking at their experience and what they're bringing to the district, you want to make sure that they can demonstrate good communication skills. What have they done to demonstrate their leadership and organizational skills and their interpersonal skills? So it forces us to take a look at what they're saying that they've done and to examine it. And does that meet what you're looking for at the level in which you'd like to have it? And then finally, the top three characteristics: community commitment, integrity and trust, and a good decision maker. And again, you want candidates who are going to come in and be able to show and share how they rank in these particular areas. And okay, so remember I said there were 10. We've called them out. We gave you 5 or 10. They are not in any kind of chronological or importance in order. They're just listed. The top 10 that came out of both the survey and the groups. I've already shared with you the 3 that came out of the survey. But again, the excellent teachers and staff, the supportive diverse community, the financial management. We heard a lot about your fiscal management, and technology activities and programs that support students. Again, at those technology activities, curriculum and education programs, people were proud of that. Attracting and maintaining highly qualified teachers, student achievement, educational programs, options and curriculum, your climate and culture, and high levels of community engagement. Questions? Challenges, again, we have some of those that are crossover. Attracting and maintaining highly qualified teachers, the student achievement activities, educational programs and option and curriculum, climate and culture, and high levels of community engagement. First,
Yeah, that was one of the things I noticed, the strength, same as the challenge.
mhm.
Almost like-
Oh, we lost you? Well, let me give you an example. One of the things they talked about were the great programs at the high school level and the middle school level. At the elementary level, they felt that some more could be done for elementary students. That's the dichotomy. So that a trust factor, and then special education programs and delivery. And this is typically one that comes in a district. Special education is an entity in and of itself. I have yet to go into a school district out of the 50 years that I've been in education where special ed was considered solid and everything was going well. Yet to do that. My daughter is a special ed supervisor, and she's been in a couple of districts, and it's always the same, the programs and the delivery, the programs and the delivery. So you're not unique in that as one of the challenges or concerns. Other considerations, remember that fourth set that I said that people thought that the board should consider? Experience in strategic planning, having worked in a similar size district, the teaching experience. Oftentimes we will have people that respond that say, you know, they have to have been a classroom teacher, but also a principal, also a central office. For me, the teaching experience stood out because sometimes people are just kind of, they won't start with teaching experience. They'll say, yeah, they should have probably had some teaching experience, but it's not been highlighted as it was in this particular case. Has served in administrative roles, principal, district office staff, etc. And I have to use myself as an example. I was a classroom teacher. I taught everything from kindergarten through 7th grade over a number of years. Went to central office, curriculum coordinator, director of curriculum, assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. I never was a principal, but I had to supervise the middle school principals. So I was in their buildings a lot and learned a lot having to work and supervise with them. But then having, again, the district office experience and then moving into the superintendency. And I used to tease one of my colleagues, as a matter of fact, one of the members of our board, the president of our board, that I did not want to be a superintendent when I grew up. I loved being assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction because I was in the classroom, I was with the teachers, and the superintendent has a whole different role to play. And I was fortunate in that I could go to a district where I could do both because it was a tiny district. Has a proven track record of success in schools and districts. People will come in and tell you a whole lot of stuff. One of the things that we do is we go back and verify. I started this program in reading and the scores were off the chart. Okay, well, let's take a look at that. Show us the data. Let us talk to colleagues who are familiar with your district. Did that really happen? And so again, it's asking people to prove what they say and be able to come to you with some data and with some information that supports what they feel is their success. Interestingly enough, like I said, this one is always a 50-50. A doctorate would be nice since many of the staff have the degree, but not required and must come with experience. And so again, that becomes a negotiable in terms of that particular piece. And the board needs to have an open mind. And that you can take that any kind of way that you want to in terms of however that comment came to be. The person does not need to live in the community, but must maintain direct ties here and shouldn't be too far away. So you don't want somebody necessarily working here and living in Indiana. Because just the travel time, how do you get to participate in activities and be on campus and be visible if it takes you, an hour and a half, 2 hours to get from work to home? Okay. The board needs to listen closely to the candidates' descriptions. You are now going to be listening for those keywords, those things that then match what you think should be happening in your district. And you want to have candidates that can come in and share with you that. Speaking Spanish is not required, but it would be an asset. One of the things that happens is there are people who are not bilingual but speak Spanish. And so you want to take that into consideration, as well as having staff that can support the individual because they need to understand the importance of that language in this community. Does not need to be a seated superintendent. We kind of already talked about that. They have administrative credentials and experience, and most of the time they have superintendent level experience. So after we got all of this information, and we drafted this description, we believe that most of the participants in the next superintendent, from the characteristics and skill sets we have heard, will be what we are going to be looking for on your behalf. We'll present this profile to the board as a complete listing, and recognizing that, again, you may want to wordsmith it or have some minor modifications or add or take away something, and so that's why it's really considered a draft. But overall, if the board approves the profile tonight, we then start, because we already have how many applicants, Ann? And so by having that kind of settled, then we can begin that screening process. Right now, we haven't begun screening. We're just taking who's ever applied and touching people on the shoulder. But once we have sort of solid in our minds what you're looking for, that enables us to start the screening process. So in a couple of weeks' time, we're not trying to interview 30 people. Okay. So again, the profile becomes the blueprint. We also then take this profile to help develop interview questions. And so that it remains focused. We develop interview questions that BWP will respond to. We will be meeting and reviewing applications at the deadline. And then from that, we will individually select about 8 to 10 individuals that we think meet the profile. So we do that on an individual basis. Then we get together as a team and we hash through all of those applications again. And then we look at who our top 10 are, and we come up with a top 10 that the team can then agree on. Those candidates are then invited in for an interview. We do Zoom interviews because it really equalizes the playing field. Nobody's having to fly in or take the train in, or as I did one year, take the megabus. And everybody has an equal opportunity to show us that they meet that criteria identified in the leadership profile. From that, we select and while we have that 10, we start to do that background check. We start to, again, talk to people. Once we identify the top, we want to say 4 to 6 that we think really meet at least an 80% level, that leadership profile, then we start digging. We do media search. We start calling people that we know, who know them, or who know somebody who knows them, to verify so that when we come to you as to present to the board, here are the top people that we think meet your leadership profile, again, at about an 80% level. And here's why. And so we go through that whole process of actually presenting the candidates, because reading stuff from an application doesn't necessarily give you all of the information. It really becomes down to talking to or listening to that individual person and putting that together with what you see on paper, and then knowing what you know about your district and looking at that leadership profile. And so it becomes a really concrete process in terms of our coming to you. The other thing that happens when we come to do the presentation of the slate, which is what we call it, is we do an in-service. We teach you and help you develop your questions, the protocol and process so that the interviews are fair to everyone, help you design who's going to ask what, when, how, what that should look like. One of the key things that's going to happen immediately is you're going to have to determine what your schedule looks like, what your calendar will be for conducting those interviews, because it should be where everyone is present, that everyone is present for each of the interviews. And when we present the 4 to 6, you get to decide whether you want all 4. You're accepting our recommendation with all 4 or all 6 and going to interview all of them. Or if there's one that, based on our presentation, you're not really sure that they're going to meet the need, but we recommend that you accept those because we've done this thorough background and screening based on the leadership profile. So that's then what happens. And once we finish that training, you're set to go. You are set to conduct those one-on-one interviews with the staff. We recommend that first round of interviews, again, be done via Zoom, because we expect that you will have applicants who are not from Illinois. We have people from across the country. When we present that, we are also presenting a final report. And that final report kind of recaps what we did with this part, but it really hones it down to, here's what we learned about the candidates. We do not, let me repeat that, we do not give the list of the applicants. We give the list of the people that we are recommending. The remainder of their personnel information remains confidential. We then send to the board, after we've done this presentation, we will do what I call it one-pager, where we have a one-page description, which could later be used to introduce the person to the community. But we give you a one-pager when we're summarizing and presenting the candidate, and then helping you establish that interview schedule. And then we send you all of their personnel records via a system using a secure Dropbox, so that you have everything that we had about the candidates that you are now going to interview. It protects the candidates who applied, it protects those applicants, and it protects you. In that then we tell you can't download the information, you can't copy it, so you can't give it out and share it, because then that puts you in a very libelous position legally with regards to personnel files. So you have that information, you have your protocol for conducting interviews, you screen those applicants down from the 4 or 6 to your final 2 or 3. Then there's a second round of interviews. Again, we will have prepared you for your second round of questions. When we did that first training session, you'll have 2 sets of questions, one for first interviews and one for second interviews, and then you will interview the candidates the second time around. And from that, we hope that you select by, hopefully, we'd like to really have majority, unanimous vote and decision on that individual. Occasionally it doesn't happen, but 90% of the time, 95% of the time, it's a unanimous vote. So that's kind of how the system and the process works based on having developed this leadership profile. And you're breaking up off and on. Okay. Well, one of the things we talk about in that training is we talk about decision making and how you can reach consensus. And we'll give you some strategies and some skills for doing that as a part of the training. You can choose to use them or not, but you will be prepared if you need to have those strategies to be able to do that. And so we think that that's an important aspect of everybody coming together, focus using the leadership profile that will get you the kind of person that you want to have. Now, I also have to say that if when we go through these 30 plus applicants, we don't see anybody that comes close to your leadership profile, we will come back to you and say, we don't see anybody that meets what you need. When you have 30, that's going to be kind of probably not going to happen. But there have been occasions when we've had to come back to a district and say, we haven't found anyone that meets the profile at this level. And so we need to extend the application deadline. We need to add some other dimensions, then we talk about how to build that up. And again, normally that doesn't happen, but you need to know that we're not just going to bring you anybody. We're going to bring you people that we think will be a good fit and match for the district. So here's the good part, the leadership profile. A person who is a good communicator who will work with all segments of the district and the community. Real solid, real easy. An individual possessing good and strong leadership, interpersonal, and organizational skills. And if you remember from the survey, that was one of the high ranking comments that came out of the survey. Someone who has excellent personnel and management skills and who is a lead learner for administrators and staff to follow. So you don't want somebody that's just going to come in and sit down. They're going to come in and actually be moving forward. A professional who has a good handle on financial operations and ways to get funding. Your funding structure is pretty solid, but we all know that that can change in the blink of an eye, given the state of Illinois, given the state of the nation, and given what happens with money and finances and taxes and all of those things. So you want somebody who has that skill set. That may not be the most critical skill set that they need to have. A leader who demonstrates a commitment to the community. And again, that goes back to whether they need to live here or not, but the demonstrating a commitment to the community means you need to be out and about. You need to be at meetings and talking to people and having coffees and other strategies that demonstrate that you are committed and that this is not just a drive-through, stop by, on my way career move, that it's going to be someone who is going to be dedicated to you and to the district. A collaborative team builder who is child-centered. I can't emphasize that enough. If we don't have someone who really focuses on the kids, why are we doing this? The kids are the center. That's what this is about. And sets a clear vision of success on both a micro and a macro level. I was looking at the award that you guys just received. Those things are important. And you need to celebrate that because those kids are going to be the ones who are going to be taking care of you, because I'm already retired, but you in your retirement. And so you want them to have all the skill sets and all of the emphasis of things, learning that they need to have. And one of the things that I always emphasize in this is we have to stop being so insular in terms of being Americans, because there's a whole world out there. And so we want kids to have global thinking and global processes and not just about good old USA. A person who will build trust, has integrity, a great work ethic, and someone who combines district initiatives into a comprehensive vision. And so again, that's a mouthful, but if you break it down, it really is somebody who will work hard, knows they need to work hard, and comes with a vision and helps you deliver that vision, helps you announce that vision, helps the community recognize that vision, and everybody's on board holding hands. And there are outliers, but for the most part, centrically, people will be on board with that. I love this phrase, an audacious leader who is not afraid to make a decision and stand by it, and who can provide the rationale for decisions that are being made. And we know that sometimes there's some differences between what the community wants, what the board wants, what the individual superintendent will see. So you need to have somebody who will say, well, we're not going to do X, Y, and Z because this is how it impacts students. Or we're going to try this because this is what's going to be good for our students. And so being able to take that on will be an important characteristic. Someone who is a good listener and demonstrates empathy and understanding of the issues of a diverse community. And then an individual who has worked in a diverse setting and has a personality that stands strong in the face of challenges. As I said, there are some individuals who have done a great job in the communities that they've served, but they haven't necessarily been multicultural in the scope of that particular district. And I think that that's an important milestone for people to have coming into a district like East Aurora in terms of what your student population looks like. So, questions? Questions on the profile?
Obviously, if people are coming from out of state, you want them to commit to their community, not just to ours, right?
Well, if they're coming here, you want them to have demonstrated that they have had a commitment to the community. Again, a lot of that really means how involved were they? How engaged were they in that community? Because that's what you want for yourself. When I was superintendent in Glenview, Northbrook, I didn't live there. You know, I had to travel there, but I was there for everything. I was on the Rotary. I was in this. I was in that. So all of those components indicated my commitment to the community, even though I didn't live there. And I had to travel 20 minutes, 25 minutes to get there. But those are the kinds of things you're looking for in terms of that commitment. Being engaged, being involved, being a listener. One of the interesting things that I did was I decided I wanted to hear what people had to say. And so I had our communications department arrange to have some in-house coffees in various neighborhoods. And then I asked people to invite their neighbors. And so I would go and sit in their living room or in their dining room or in their kitchen, and they would have 6 or 7 or 8 of their neighbors come. And we would talk about what was happening in education and what was on their mind. So one Friday night, I was in a parent's home thinking, I'm having a great time talking to these parents with a little glass of rosé and chatting about the good things and things that we need to work on in our district, because I'm committed to trying to make sure that our kids are getting the best education and going straight to the community, going within the community on a small scale basis, 10 or 12 people at a time. I did that over like 4 months. Gave me much more of an insight in terms of where people were. So it's that kind of thinking. I mean, that was an example, but you want someone that's going to come in and demonstrate that they have a commitment by virtue of the things that they've done. The other piece is the recognition, that people recognize who the superintendent is, no matter how large the district is. And talking with some of your students, a couple of them indicated that at one point they didn't know who the superintendent was. They had never seen them, didn't know who they were. And it's like, and the others said, oh no, I saw them once, or I saw them, it's someplace. And again, so for students, that connection is important. That commitment is important. So my own story about that is I'm in the shopping mall in the summertime, and one of my students comes up and has their cousin with them and say, this is our school superintendent, Dr. Hill. And I was so pleased that the student introduced me, knew who I was, and introduced me to a family member proudly, that they knew the superintendent and had that connection. So those are some of the kinds of things that you want to look for and hear about as you're interviewing the applicants and the candidates.
I just have a procedural question. Once we get to the point where we have to interview the candidates, is that something, I mean, you mentioned that it's on Zoom. Is that still something that's executive session, or is that something like on a session or like today?
It's executive session.
Okay,
It would be
okay.
executive session, yep.
Yep. Right.
Correct me if I'm not wrong, this is pretty much our last public meeting, and then the rest will be pretty much executive.
Yeah, and you will
Yep.
decide how, how you're going to then approach the
Right.
public in terms of what your final decision is.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, we'll be helping you navigate that and the components of that. One of the things that we find, and I probably have gotten in trouble in a couple of states and school districts pushing back, is that people want to know, well, who all applied? What's their names? Because they want to then go and do their own research and Google search. That's a no. It minimizes your pool. And I ask people to put themselves in that position where somebody has their name. They haven't even decided whether they're going to apply. They just kind of indicated. And now you have people Googling and calling and all of that. And in a couple of instances, we've had people who were thinking about applying. Somebody got their name. They blasted it all over the news, and the person got in trouble because within their community. And they weren't even one of the final candidates yet. They were just thinking about it. But it was like, a referendum was coming up. Well, why should we vote for the referendum when this person doesn't, think enough of us to stay here in the job? I mean, that's some of the kind of thinking that goes on. So we keep that all in-house. And you will find that you will have candidates that will be one of the first things that they ask is what's the confidential nature. And when they get to the point where they're one of your finalists, semifinalists, or your finalists, then the expectation is that they may tell their superintendent, or they may tell their school board, or whoever needs to be notified, that they are in consideration for this. But that usually is down to your final two or your final three, because you don't want to disrupt anyone else's career by virtue of people wanting to have that information. And like I said, I've pushed a lot of buttons in terms of people. Why can't we know? Well, why do you need to know? Is the question. Okay, so this is what it looks like. We're doing the under specification, which is one of our components for this month. We're asking you to approve the leadership profile, at least in the broad context. And again, if you want to wordsmith some of the pieces, that's fine. But overall, the context of that, report and appendices made available to the public. You get to determine how much of that, if any of that, at least the primary part of the report, you may want to share with the community. Again, you want to have this as a transparent process in terms of this is what we heard, this is what was reported, we're moving on. So that's all being done at this point. From January 31st, when the applications conclude, again, BWP will be taking over there, doing that screening, doing the follow-up in terms of reference checks, et cetera, and preparing the slate of candidates, and then preparing what I call interview protocol for the board. And then as a part of that, having you select the candidates, again, that we recommend. Now, you may have a candidate that you're recommending that we don't recommend, wasn't a part of our pool for whatever reason. You still have the option of including that candidate as a part of interviews. What happens with BWP is then we don't guarantee if you select that candidate that we will conduct a search if that doesn't work out. Because one of our guarantees is that whoever you hire, if they come in and they're solid for 2 years, then if after 2 years it doesn't work, we redo the search without consultant cost. We just do it for administrative cost. So again, we're backing those candidates that we're recommending to you, but know that there is an option for not having having a candidate that we did not recommend. Then February, March, the board conducts its first round of interviews. So again, we're looking for dates in February. We recommend that you set aside, that you not try to interview more than 2 candidates a night. It gets confusing. It's hard. So if you have 6 candidates, you're looking for 3 nights within a week. You don't want that spread out too far, that you can interview those candidates. Then after that, again, we'll give you some strategies and a mechanism. We're going to give you some rubrics and some other information during that training that you can use to help you screen down from that first set of interviews, selecting semifinalists. Those are, again, people now you want to do some more in-depth discussion and questioning of, and then selecting your finalists. Negotiating contracts. We assist you in that we will provide you with what the candidates say that they're interested in terms of contracts, so that you're not going into it blind, not knowing what their expectations are, and then you negotiate from there. And so we think that that really cuts down the amount of time that it takes for negotiations, because everybody's coming to the table already with what they're considering for that particular position. And then we talk with you and help you determine how you're going to introduce a new superintendent to the community and the date that that's going to happen. And then the new superintendent begins on or before July 1st. So that's the process.
Okay.
Questions?
If Dr. Norell, isn't she leaving July 1st? Wouldn't we want them
And
to-
she is leaving July 1st.
wouldn't we
yes.
want the person to start before that, so there's some overlap or not?
Well, I think, if we're hired by March, yeah, they will have that transition with each other.
Yeah. Mhm. Other questions?
I have actually to build that. Does the current superintendent have any role in this process prior to the transition at all?
No,
There's no, okay.
unless they took the survey.
Right. I just want to be.
But we
clear on
didn't have any interview or focus group discussions with the current superintendent. So the survey would have been their
that.
opportunity,
Yep.
much
Okay.
like the rest of the community.
I think I would want her.
Thoughts, comments, questions?
Okay, so.
So we're back to, what do you think about the profile?
Yeah, I think it's broad enough that we can get a variety of individuals who may be interested in working for the district. It's not as specific that I had hoped it wouldn't be, but I like it broad, so candidates would not steer away from not applying for the job, for the opportunity.
Well, I think it is very broad, so I think, it should be able to attract a lot of candidates. I think the proof's in the pudding, when you go and, start interviewing them and seeing how they actually fit, that type of thing.
So we're starting off with about 30 people already. One of the things that then we do put on our website is the profile. You don't put all the rest of the report on it, but the profile, so that candidates can go and look and see, because then they may determine that they want to withdraw. because they don't match what the profile says, or they may determine that they're going to complete their application because they've got some things going on and can come in and feel like they would be a good fit. And so it really does allow us to have that initial screening of the 30 candidates. I suspect we're probably going to be maybe have 30, 35, and maybe 5 will drop off. So I think we're still going to be around that 30 when we get ready to do our screening process. And you just need to know that that's a pretty good number. That's a pretty significant number of applicants for this position. You're a medium-sized, large district, as opposed to something like Chicago, which we did the search for, that has 344,000 kids. And so you've got a good set of people out there who have an interest in, and they've been in districts either in similar size or just a little bit smaller, and they're looking to take on more of a challenge. So the fact that, I've done searches where we only had 20 applicants. And by the time we screened them down to that 10, we had lost half the people. Coming down from 30, it's going to be a challenge for us. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a challenge for you. We want for you to struggle. We want for you to struggle. We want to give you such outstanding candidates that you're going to struggle to find the one that best, from your perspective, meets that leadership profile. And we're going to help you be able to filter that out. And again, that's one of the reasons why we don't list the profile components in any kind of chronological order, because you need to determine of those things, what you're looking for in terms of individual candidates, rather than they have to have number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. If they have 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, where they are solid, and again, we can provide some evidence, then there's somebody worth considering. If they only have 3, no, not so much.
All righty. Okay, so at this time, would you like us to, if everybody's happy with the profile, would you I'd like to call a motion? Okay.
Yeah, I will make the motion that we move forward with the leadership profile that was presented to us this evening.
Okay. So it is motion to approve the superintendent leadership profile. Secretary, call the roll.
Second.
Oh, we got a second. Yeah, okay. Call the roll.
LaShay,
Yes.
Schubert, Olivas,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Cefuentes.
Yes.
Gillespie.
Yes.
Okay. Mhm.
Thank
Do
you
we
so
pick
much.
the dates for, sorry, question, do we pick the dates for interview now, or is that something that we do later?
No.
And you need to know that that's going to be about a 2-hour session. It's about
Okay.
2-hour, 2.5-hour session. We use probably 1 hour and 45 minutes of that to do the training, and then the rest of that part to actually do the candidate presentation.
Well, I guess we can all look at our calendars and pick it at the next board meeting then.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I think we're motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Secretary, call the roll.
Olivas,
Yes.
Cefuentes.
Yes.
Schubert, Gillespie,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
LaShay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody stay warm.
Thank you.
Let me introduce Dr. Hector.
Oh, hi, Hector.
Just before you leave, I apologize, but it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much for the information you provided, and we're really excited about the work So it's a pleasure meeting you tonight. I'm Hector Garcia.
Thank you.
Sure. Sure. It seems like just yesterday, but this is my 32nd year in education. Started off as a teacher, moved through the ranks, all in the western suburbs. So I'm very familiar with your community. I was the recent superintendent in Plano, not too far away from here, and I'm the current superintendent in Hinsdale District 181. So it truly is a pleasure to be here, and thank you again for this opportunity. All right, pleasure meeting you.
I don't know. I looked at the applications.